Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in. This video is going to give you a quick introduction on using annotative objects and styles, which I'll just refer to simply as annotative objects for the rest of this video. If you already use annotative objects, you might be wondering why I'm making this video. The reason is that a lot of AutoCAD users still don't use annotative objects, and even more of them don't know how to cure the minor annoyances associated with using annotative objects. I'll discuss how to solve these minor annoyances later. For people already accustomed to using annotative objects, you might still learn something useful. In this video I'm going to discuss the following: why you should use annotative objects, how to use annotative objects, and most importantly, how to avoid the pitfalls associated with using annotative objects. These pitfalls can pose real problems, and I think they are the main reason a lot of users don't yet use annotative objects. The pitfalls are super easy to cope with. I'll show you how to cope with them towards the end of this video. So why use annotative objects? A typical AutoCAD user is going to be way faster using annotative objects compared to a user that isn't using them. Anyone who's made the switch probably already knows this. You don't need nearly as many styles. For example, I only need one small text style in my entire drawing if that text style is annotative. If my small text style was not annotative, I would need a separate small text style for every single drawing scale that I use in the drawing. It's way easier to customize AutoCAD when you're using annotative objects and styles. My ribbon panels would either be impossible to program, or they would be way more complex and convoluted if I didn't use annotative styles. Notice how my revision cloud buttons work. This would be what every button would look like in my ribbon if I were not using annotative styles. There are alternatives to using annotative objects. These alternatives include not drawing to scale in model space and annotating in paper space. I don't recommend doing either of these if you have a choice. It's not the most efficient way to draft and can cause a lot of other issues as well. What are annotative objects, and what do they do? Well, we have annotative styles, like text styles, leader styles, dimension styles, to name a few. Annotative styles mean you don't need a separate style for each individual drawing scale that you use. If I use about 10 different scales in one of my drawings, and I have 3 different text styles, like let's say a text style for small text, medium text, and large text, I would need 30 different styles just for text alone. And we need styles for dimensions and leaders. That equals a lot of different styles. Annotative styles automatically adjust the size of their objects based on your drawing scale. This means that one style works for every drawing scale that you use in your drawing. I would only need 3 text styles if they're annotative, compared to 30 styles if they weren't annotative. Blocks can also be annotative. An annotative block will automatically scale to match your drawing scale. This is way more convenient than, say, having different blocks for each scale or manually scaling blocks. Hatches and geometric tolerances can also be annotative. I don't really cover these in this video, but these are useful features as well. On to maybe what is the most important section of this video: how to avoid the pitfalls associated with annotative objects. A common problem with AutoCAD is that some of the variables are set to undesirable defaults. The variables that control annotative objects are no exception. The first pitfall I'll cover is the all anno visible variable. I recommend setting this to 1. You turn this off and on by clicking the little icon down here. Turn this on in all your drawings, all your templates, and both in model space and paper space. Now, there are legitimate reasons to have this variable turned off, but as a rule of thumb, leave it turned on by default. Make sure anyone turning it off has a good reason for doing so. The reason it's important to turn this on is that if you have information that is set to the wrong annotative scale, which tends to occur now and then, it won't show up. it'll disappear. See my example using this text note. This can happen when someone copies text from one detail and pastes it into another detail. If the details are different annotative scales, this text won't show up in your viewport. Even if the text is the wrong size or set to the wrong scale, less harm is done if we can still see it, rather than it disappearing. Experience checking drawings has taught me that it is way harder to spot something that is missing, rather than spot a basic conformity error. So I recommend leaving this variable set to 1, and let users change it as long as they know what they are doing and have a good reason for doing it. Now there are situations where you would turn this off, usually when you have geometry in model space, but you want to show it at 2 different scales. The second variable that can cause problems is the Anno-Autoscale variable. This variable is turned off by default, but sometimes it gets turned on accidentally. It's turned off and on by clicking the icon right next to the All Anno Visible icon. If it's on and the drawing scale changes, it adds that scale to every annotative object in the drawing. You probably don't want this to happen for a few different reasons. There are some ways to use this to your advantage, but I highly recommend leaving this variable off 99% of the time. This variable does allow you to add a new annotative scale to a large number of annotative objects all at the same time. I will occasionally use this variable to change the scale of a detail. Here's what I'll do. I'll copy the detail along with all of its annotations to my clipboard. I'll then paste everything into a blank drawing. Next I set the All Anno Visible variable to 1 in that blank drawing. And then I change the drawing scale in the blank drawing to my intended drawing scale for that detail. I'll copy everything back into my original drawing. Changing the annotation scale, of course, means they'll have to reposition all of these annotative objects. The third and final pitfall that I'll cover is the Selection Anno Display variable. Not many people know about this, but this fixes one of the peskiest problems associated with annotative objects. It's set to 1 by default, and it's the culprit behind the ghost texting that we frequently encounter with annotative text. And of course it happens with blocks, leaders, dimensions as well, any annotative object really. The easiest way to fix this is type Selection Anno Display into your command prompt and set it to 0. Thanks very much for sticking around to the end of this video. This was by no means an exhaustive tutorial on annotative objects. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the comments below, and of course, additional help can be found on Autodesk's website as well. If you found this video helpful, definitely check out the other videos on my channel, and check back now and then as I'll be uploading new videos in the future.